So Konami is sort of holding the player base hostage right now over this whole Yu-Gi-Oh ban list that's sort of looming over the players' heads. And it's frustrating for a lot of reasons. So, for starters, for a long time, Konami gave us a no sooner than date. And prior to that, we would get an actual concrete date for when the ban list was coming out. These changes were made because of certain scenarios that Konami ended up finding themselves in. Firstly, the concrete dates made it very difficult to sort of address problems as they arose. So the no sooner than date sort of allowed them more freedom to release the ban list when they felt it was necessary. But as that change was implemented, it became obvious that that's not actually how Konami uses the no sooner than date. Really, all it is it's just sort of like the absolute minimum date that we're going to get a ban list. And it feels like beyond that, there isn't really any sort of consistency as to when these things come out. And, people like Farfa have, gotten extremely neurotic around trying to piece together when these things are going to come out based on existing data. And, Konami has proven time and time again that that's not a reliable way to predict their behavior. But in addition to that, they even got rid of the no sooner than date, now saying no sooner than a few months from now. And that has made players even more frustrated because now we don't even have a concrete date of when we can start to expect the ban list. So Farfa's spreadsheet is the closest thing to a no sooner than date we're going to be getting anytime soon. And as a result of this, the player base has become extremely, extremely feral. And at first, I was beginning to sort of think that all of this was a bit of a, overreaction. But as time progresses and I start to see a lot of very, high level players talking about the situation, I begin to see that there are a lot of legitimate concerns around not having a ban list, not knowing when the ban list is going to come out, and why a lot of people are frustrated about this. So, the first big reason is it's really hard to test for future events if you don't know whether or not a ban list is going to come out between now and when those events happen. It's so frustrating because instead of giving us any sort of clarification on these things, Konami releases an update to the tournament policy that says if you release or if you submit your deck list before the event is supposed to happen, you can now change your deck list in the event that the ban list makes your deck now illegal, which is not addressing the actual problem. You're sort of like creating a problem and then pretending like you're fixing something that was a problem already. But ignoring all of that, a lot of players want to be able to test for, the nationals that are coming up, YCSs that are going to be happening over the next few weeks. And in order to do that, players need to know what the format's going to look like. And there's no telling whether or not the ban list is going to come out tomorrow, next week, a month from now. I mean, it's been 2 weeks out from when Farfa's spreadsheet said that the ban list is going to come out, basically, or maybe a week at this point. But we're starting to see sort of the breakdown of people's mental state within the Yu-Gi-Oh community. And as I start to pay more attention, I begin to sort of fall into the same trap. I don't necessarily go to a lot of high-tiered tournaments, but I do invest in a lot of decks, and I do enjoy playing the format when I get the opportunity. So a lot of what's going on is really difficult to really defend Konami in this situation. And the fact is that they're refusing to release the ban list, and they're refusing to give us any sort of meaningful update as to whether or not there is even going to be one before any given tournament, or even give an update as to whether a ban list is coming anytime soon. And Konami can't be unaware of this because, as a previous video I posted talks about, Mananium Primeheart trended on Twitter because people were posting the post that got posted instead of the ban list on the day that Farfa's spreadsheet said it was going to come out. And the fact that so many people started posting that, and the fact that it's become such a copy pasta in the community as of recent, really drives home just how frustrated people are at the fact that we don't have a ban list yet. In addition to that, there's a lot of difficulty surrounding sort of like where the format is going to go. There's a lot of people that are really hesitant to invest in certain decks for fear that the ban list is going to slaughter them. Like, I imagine a lot of people are having a difficult time justifying buying any sort of Kashtira cards, knowing full well that when the ban list comes out, those cards could end up getting hit. And a lot of the periphery decks like Sprite, Branded, the new Super Heavy, the Pearlies, like, are any of the cards integral to those strategies going to get banned? I know that Pearly is an entirely new archetype that all came out within the last few months, and all the good Super Heavy Samurais are the new stuff, but there are cards in that deck that are older, that have existed for a long time. Could we see those cards get banned or limited in some way, and suddenly the deck isn't as consistent as it used to be? All questions that make it difficult to justify spending money on these decks if the question mark of whether those decks are even going to be playable still looms. And are any of these decks even going to be worth playing if Kashtira comes out of the ban list mostly unscathed? Like, if all they get is a slap on the wrist and no other decks get hit, much like the first ban list we got during COVID, like, Kashtira is going to be the best deck by a country mile. And the fact is that if Kashtira continues to exist in that capacity, it is not going to be worth playing a lot of these other decks. Like, certain tier 2 decks are just completely unplayable if the field is mostly Kashtira, because they just have an extremely terrible matchup going into that, into that deck. So, is it worth investing in all the new Branded cards if there's a high probability that Branded isn't going to have a very easy time playing through the field if the field is mostly Kashtira? So a lot of questions loom, not just what cards are going to get hit and unhit on the ban list, but what decks are going to be good. What decks are going to be good going into certain events. Whether or not events are even going to be under the previous ban list or a new hypothetical ban list. All of these questions have been left unanswered, and Konami refuses to give any sort of hints as to what they are. And it feels like more and more as time progresses, they have no intention of giving us any information. And as days go by, weeks go by, Konami starts to look worse and worse, right? It's difficult to justify, listening to anything they say if they're going to continue to have such poor communication with the player base. And it's like, there's so many controversies going on in so many different communities. The Nintendo issues that are going on, issues with, Blizzard. So the fact that, we didn't get our ban list in time, it seems silly, but for the people that have invested time and money into this game, there are a lot of things at stake, especially for the people that play this game professionally, whether it be the people that just make content or the people that actually go to tournaments as part of a team and try to do well in order to make money for their sponsors. It's like, it's difficult to not see this as a huge problem, right? So what exactly is Konami going to do to fix it? And at this point, it feels like not a lot. It feels like we're just kind of left on our own and left to sort of like, sit with our, twiddling our thumbs and, waiting for things to change. But it's getting to the point where a lot of people within the community are starting to get really antsy and starting to like really feel the weight of this impending ban list. So, it would be nice if we had a more open line of communication with Konami and they did a better job of telling the player base what to expect and when to expect things. I understand that previous years have proven that having a concrete date for the ban list is not a good thing, but once you know the date for when the ban list is going to come out and when you think it's going to make the most sense, tell us, okay? Like, give us some form of information. Tell us what's going on, all right? I feel like that's not too much to ask. But at this point, it feels like asking anything is, too much to ask. But we'll have to see what happens. Go ahead and, ban that subscribe button. I'm just kidding. Just hit the subscribe button. And I'll see you guys in the next video.